Welcome back to Light Talk, where everyday people can share their own unique spiritual journey stories, talking of their paranormal and NDEs, OBEs, or anything of the unknown. Feel free to email me at lighttalk423 at gmail.com if you have a story you would like to share. And while you're at it, click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons down below. And we're going to kick this show off because our guest has a lot of stories she's going to want to tell you. So we're going to kick it off. So, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, of course, my pleasure. Thanks for being here.
So you want me to just jump in?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll just go.
All right. Well, my name is Kat, and I began having odd experiences when I was a child, about 12 years old. For whatever reason, I got the hit or the inclination to wander over to the metaphysical section of the public library. And I checked out a book that had it was called like The Art of Soul Travel or something like that. But what it had in it was a meditation practice. And while it's kind of a strange hobby to pick up for a kid, I started following the practices that were in that book, which are pretty standard. You can find the same void state meditation practices like think nothing, empty your mind, that sort of a practice. But very swiftly after practicing this for a while, I started to get, what people call downloads nowadays, but I'm ashamed to admit those days we weren't downloading anything. That was back in the early 90s. So I always just called it getting the knowing. But the first one I ever got said something along the lines of, you're not really in your body to begin with. It's not like a container that you're stuck inside. And it was more like something like a radio signal, like you're tuned to physical reality. That's the station that you're receiving, but just like the radio, that all the other stations are broadcasting simultaneously. So it's really just a question of the frequency you have yourself tuned to as to what you're receiving, which seemed like an odd sort of thing at that age, especially. But not long after that, I was laying on the couch reading a book, minding my own business, and when I went to shift my body to like roll over, I actually felt myself falling like off the couch. Like I thought I had fallen onto the floor. But when I stood up and turned around and looked, my body was still laying there on the couch exactly where it had been. I hadn't moved at all. And as you might imagine, there's the panic and freak out for a moment. And I ended up right back in my body. So at first, it was all very wobbly and weird and but exciting at the same time. And from that point forward, it would happen sort of sporadically, or I wasn't doing it intentionally, essentially. I wasn't able to make it happen on purpose, but it would happen on occasion throughout doing various other things, which was kind of strange. And it was an exciting enough result for me that it was back to the public library for me, because in my adolescent brain, I'm like, if this is real, I wonder what else is real, right? So maybe magic is real. So I check out a book for my second go at this on ancient Gaelic rites. And for whatever reason, in my adolescent brain, I thought that the cool thing to do would to be summoning fairies. So I picked a summoning ritual for my first like foray into performing magic. And now I knew how to gather up my energy and how to use and condense energy. That was all part of my meditation practice. So I thought, cool, I'm going to kind of combine my meditation and my energy work with performing this ritual. And it felt very powerful. It felt very exciting to speak the words, speak energy into words. And I felt very magical. But of course, in the moment, like nothing happened. The Tinkerbell did not come to have tea with me or anything like that. So I was disappointed in the result and just sort of left it until that night when I went to go do my meditation practice. And I ended up being flung out of my body, like all the way across the room in the dark. And when I stood up and turned around and looked, sitting on my bed, like hovering over my body, like hunched over me, was this large black sort of figure that was looming over me. And as you might imagine, I was completely terrified, panicked. I tried to flee, only to end up like right back in my body, only to end up like flung back out of my body, only to try and flee again. It was a whole panic scenario. And this would happen, 5, 6 times a night, um, for weeks, for months. And it got to the point where I was losing sleep. The effects were starting to show. Essentially, my mom started to notice I don't want to get up and go to school in the morning. I don't want to go to bed at night. I don't want to be in my room. It's really starting to have an adverse effect. And so, in trying to deal with the situation with this entity, this being that was in my room, we went to all different kinds of practitioners. At the time, again, you couldn't just jump on the internet and find somebody. You couldn't just YouTube and find out what was going on. You were really kind of limited to the phone book and whoever you could find locally, who might know anything about this type of thing, which is pretty limited. So we went to what I now know is Reiki people. They were waving their hands around me and saying, I can feel something here. So I'm guessing they're energy workers. At the time, I had no idea what was going on, though. I was still a very young child with no exposure to anything like this. She tried tarot readers. She tried various Wiccan people to like clear the room. Maybe there's a spirit in my room, all of this type of stuff. But at the end of the day, none of it was ever effective. And nothing ever got rid of the entity in my room or in my mind or wherever it was. And she wasn't able to do anything to help me with it. So I was really kind of left to the own defenses of my mind and my own energy to sort the situation out. And over time, I learned to sense when the presence was there. Like sometimes I would get out of my body and be able to go do things, and sometimes that thing would be in the room, right? And it was like I could feel its energy or its personality there before I ever even saw it. So my senses became heightened to other energy personality signatures. And as that ability developed, certain other changes began to happen, specifically with my dream spaces. So what began to happen is that I would be in the middle of a dream, like a regular old dream, and I would get that same energy feeling, that same presence, like there's another personality signature here, and it would turn me lucid. So I kind of ended up inadvertently stumbling into lucid dreaming because my trigger was that I would notice when there was another personality present that wasn't just a dream character, wasn't just a part of myself. And at first I would notice it and I'd be able to look like directly into their eyes and be like, you're not whoever, you're not my mom, or you're not my friend. Who are you? And sometimes they would just laugh at me. Sometimes they would interact with me. It really started to freak me out when they started to like, you're right, I'm not your mom, but maybe we should wake you up because you're not really supposed to notice that, And it began to be very weird. Like, what are these other presences that are now in my dreams? And over time, some of them would interact with me and talk. Some just didn't want to deal with me at all and would leave if I noticed it. But they started to actually talk to me and teach me things and tell me things. So it was from those other personalities that I learned how to control my astral states, how to change the frequency of my energy depending on what I wanted to do in an astral state. they helped teach me how to control and manipulate energy in a dream space. So how to change dreams around, how to move into different spheres of dreams and manipulate within the dream. All the things that you kind of hear lucid dreamers talking about. It was actually the other energy personalities that were there that taught me how to do all of that type of stuff. As that sort of developed and I gained better control over my astral states and I gained better control over my dream states, kind of simultaneously, I don't know if I turned into like a beacon or something lit up, but there was more than the issue with the shadow person became an issue with shadow people. It was sort of like I was a lit up beacon. So more of these type of personalities would show up in my bedroom. Most of the time, it was like they just wanted a reaction out of me. And you do sometimes hear spiritual people talking about these sort of like parasitic type of personality structures that want to take your energy, or they're just trying to frighten you, or they're trying to gain an energy reaction off of you. And, you know, it was a long time before I kind of realized that for like the human responses of like fear or anger or all of those types of things, sometimes lust, even they'll use like incubus and succubus type of things, are all very specifically like 3D energies and are very dense energies, very like heavy energies. So those are usually the types of things they're trying to elicit because they're just very potent energies. But as I was growing up as a teenager, obviously I didn't know any of that. And so, there were a lot of periods of years where, you go through the whole gambit of things, right? Like at first it's all fear and fleeing. But through that, from the fear and fleeing, I actually learned I learned how to combine that with other things that I'd learned and create like portals or doorways or things to step through. So it actually, in trying to run away, I ended up actually being able to learning how to move into other realities, other dimensions or higher dimensions, with with my astral travel. And then I went through a whole phase of, like fighting, anger responses, right? And again, because of the things I had learned, I knew I could condense my energy. I could you like put force push, like use energy to fight back. I spent a whole number of years trying to fight. And again, oddly, it really kind of honed those skills as well as of energy control, like being able to have command over what I was doing. You know what I mean? And of course, fighting never works. And it never did. And eventually I got to a place that was more like apathy. Like, really? We're going to do this again? Like, what are you even here for? The energy settled down. It wasn't quite so angry. It wasn't quite so afraid. I had walked through a lot of fear and sort of realized over time that, if they were going to do something to me, if they were capable of actually doing something, they would have done it by now. So whatever this is, it's not, there's really no reason for me to be this afraid and angry over it. And it kind of developed into this apathy feeling. And that's when I started to actually sort of chill out and ask some questions. Like, what are you? And I remember asking one of them one night, so are you like me? Were you human once, or are you something else? Like, what are you? And it was the first time that I actually felt this energy coming off of one of them that was actually just like sad. It was almost crushing. Like, I no longer recognized this personality as a human or as anything. They were unrecognizable, rejected. And that was a really sad, crushing feeling came off of that personality over that. And I started to realize that maybe the only reason that I'm seeing shadows is because I'm not able to identify the energy that's actually there. I'm putting fear and anger and all of this mystery on it. And if I chill out and relax with that and just let the energy come through, maybe we're able to sort out a little bit the different kinds of entities and personalities that are actually coming through. And kind of simultaneously at the same time, again, this is taking place over, a period of 30 years. So it's a very cumulative sort of thing, but kind of simultaneously in the, what I always assumed was a lucid dreaming state, I found out I was very wrong about that. I had been being trained or taught how to do certain other kinds of things. I had been shown or lived through a couple of previous lives and the death scenarios of those previous lives. It was like they wanted me to understand and feel what that transition process felt like, what it felt like to pass on from this world and move into the next. And then after that, it was like I would find myself called to various situations where I was helping somebody who was transitioning move into the light or go down the tunnel. Like I would, my dream or my vision would lead me to sitting in the passenger seat of a car with a guy who's just like staring at a concrete barrier, gripping the steering wheel. And I was like, I think we need to go beyond the barrier. So I've got to like get him out of the car and walk him. It's like creating all of those visual imageries that help people understand and process what's happened so that they can connect to the light or connect to a higher vibration and get to where they need to go. So I have, walked people past the barrier or through field, walked them down the tunnel, whatever it is that it needs to happen for them. Sometimes even getting or channeling certain other people in their life, right? Like, so images or understanding of grandma so that I can produce like a little toy they used to play with when they were kids and things like that to get people to come along. And it was all very strange and almost kind of upsetting at first. Like, it felt very much like an invasion of privacy to me in some ways, because I think I always felt like, I'm not, who am I to be doing this kind of thing? You know what I mean? This is all very personal, private stuff, like the death process for people. And why am I the one walking people down the tunnel of light? There came a point where I realized suddenly that I was working with other people, other human signatures in their dreams, helping them work through the energy of certain of their scenarios in their life. And that was upsetting and felt like an invasion of personal privacy. I'm like, why am I don't want to be I don't want to be in other people's heads doing this. Because for a long time I had the impression I was kind of sore about it. Like, why are you in my head showing me all of this? And I was really upset and I just wanted my energy to be mine. You know what I mean? Like I don't I just want to be normal. I don't want to have any of this stuff going on. And I literally was driving home one night and was like screaming in my car, like, get out of my head. Like, I didn't ask for this. And I don't know what you're doing here or what you even want from me. But all of this is like, I just want to be normal. And it was the first time I had ever experienced embodiment channeling, which is a very odd feeling. As I was driving down the road and suddenly like this voice comes out of my mouth that's not my voice, saying things that I'm not actually thinking. And what it said was, we're not in your head, you're out, and we're trying to help. And I think it was really the first time I really had to come to terms with none of this is actually happening inside of my head. I've always been an astral traveler since I was a kid. And I'm actually operating in other spheres of reality. And they're just trying to show me how to operate and how to do what I need to do over there. And it was really it took me a minute to really integrate that. I came from a completely secular background of people who are, atheists or into science. Like none of the woo-woo stuff isn't real, basically. And so I had been operating under the impression for a long time that what I had was some weird version of narcolepsy or something, where I would just, for whatever reason, I end up like asleep and dreaming at random points. But I had to kind of grapple with, like, you're not actually crazy, and it's not actually narcolepsy. You don't have some form of high functioning schizophrenia. Um, and overcoming those beliefs about myself in order to feel comfortable with what was happening, you know? So once I realized that what it really was me leaving into other dimensions and other spheres of reality, opens up. It's kind of like every step of understanding you get, or every integration of understanding you get, just opens up a whole nother can of worms, a whole nother sphere of things. It's like if you're playing a video game, the next section of the map lights up, basically. So from there, once I realized I'm actually leaving, all sorts of odd interstellar and interdimensional travel started happening. It's like I would be sitting in bed and all of a sudden be like sucked out of my body and shot past all kinds of stars and planets and everywhere else, and end up standing in a space that, like, I can't even, my consciousness as a 3D human is having trouble even comprehending what it's witnessing, only to be like bounced back out of that and then sucked right back up and standing in this like construct in the void space where there is a very alien personality in this like space with me. And I'm just like, do you talk to people like me often? Right? Like, are you the kind that comes to Earth? Like, do you work with humans often? Or is this just, and what it said was ability to come here, rare your kind. And I remember I think I came back from that one and actually just started crying because I felt so weird and alone, right? Like, why am I so weird in all of this? Why do I have various kinds of personalities standing in my bedroom when I leave my body? And the whole thing was very painful and isolating for me. I was working a regular 9 to 5 job. Well, actually, it was more like, one of those jobs. They try to tell you it's a 9 to 5 job, but it turns out to be 60, 70 hours a week, one of those kind of jobs. And it's not exactly something that you can, how do you say that at a water cooler? How do you bring that up? Like, how was your evening? Oh, it was great, except for, the lost soul that I helped cross back over into the light and the alien interaction I had. Like, you can't, I was living such an inauthentic life for myself because there was just no way in the life I had built for myself to be myself openly. Nobody was going to understand that. And that got to be really, really heavy, to the point where it was just a complete mismatch of life. I got to the point where I couldn't even get out of bed in the morning. Like, I wasn't even calling into work. I was just ignoring the phone calls from work, wondering where I was. Like, I had given up. I'm not doing this anymore. And it was at that point when I went to go, sit with one of my, people call them angels and guides. It's not the word I've ever used for them. Again, I didn't come from a religious background or anything, so it was never, angels was never part of it for me, but it's a lot of what people call it. So, and I remember telling him, I need you to take all of this away from me and just keep it here, safe with you, and on your side, in your dimension, because it's just hurting inside of me. Like, I'm never going to be able to express this. I'm never going to be able to do anything with it. It's not what people want from me. Like, I'm just supposed to go to work and make the money and pay the bills and do all of this. And all of this other stuff is just, it feels crushing like shards in my heart. So I need you to just take all of this and keep it safe here on this side where it can't hurt me in physical reality anymore. And and he kind of giggled at me or laughed at the idea. But at the same time, I got this knowing that was like, you don't, this is, it's your life. Just change it. Like, you don't have to do anything. You literally don't have to do all of this. You can absolutely change your life and do something else. And so I did. I quit my job. I came home. I had no idea what I was going to do with it, but I just sort of decided, all right, at this point, I work for the universe. I don't know what that means, or I don't know why I've always had this going on in the background, all of these sort of odd abilities and odd experiences. But it's time that we figure out what, right? It's time we figure out what we're doing with it. So that's when I sort of just relaxed and started going with the flow and just letting whatever unfolded unfold. And it turns out that there's more than one way to make things happen. And when you just sort of let the unfolding happen the way it's supposed to, rather than thinking there's a way you have to, like, you have to go to work, you have to pay the bills, you have to do all of this stuff, it's kind of amazing the ways that things work out. I retired, like, I call it being retired because there's no way I'm ever going back to that life, but I retired 5, 6 years ago now. And in that time, I make less money than I ever have. Like, I still don't have a source of income. I'm not selling anything. I don't have like programs or books or anything like that I'm doing. But at the same time, I'm actually like way better off than I ever was before. Like, things got paid off, bills got reduced, money came in here and there in ways, channels that I didn't even know were available or were happening, that were in the works. So it's been a mighty interesting journey. There's a lot that goes on in other spheres of reality that I think things get interpreted in a lot of different ways by a lot of different people based on their own experiences and their own socializations, right? The interesting thing for me has always been that I didn't have any socializations. I didn't have any preconceived ideas about what any of this was. Throughout everything I went through, I never looked at the shadow people and screamed demon at them, you know. And I never met with the higher personalities and was like, oh, angels. I didn't have any preconceived notions about what I was interacting with. And I think that in many ways that was hard because I had no frame of reference, but it was also valuable and really interesting because I started thinking about things in terms of not necessarily good and evil, not necessarily love and hate, but the underlying currents of emotional vibration that was there. I never interpreted anything as evil. And so eventually, when I worked through my own vibration on things, my own fear, my own anger, I was able to see sadness and invalidity and confusion. And as I started talking, interacting and talking more rather than freaking out, many of those types of personalities, the ones that people, you know, are parasitic, or usually most people that I've talked to just emanate love and light, and they scurry away, and they will if you're not giving them what they want. Some of them just run away. But I began to see, instead of shadow people, you know, it was like my vision cleared, and I could see this isn't a weird, scary shadow person. It's actually a, you know, 38-year-old blue-eyed ginger guy sitting there instead of some monster. And they're all very confused. What he said was, "Oh my God, you can actually see me." And I was like, "Yeah, I can see you." And he was like, "Well, how is it that you can leave?" He's like, "This is hell, isn't it? But why are you able to leave?" And I was like, "Honey, this isn't hell. This is my bedroom." You know, like you're not there. They're very confused and lost vibrationally themselves. But they got to get stuck and don't know how to connect to the light, and all they're getting on their end is sort of an astral static world, being non-physical but still in the 3D realm that they can't really interact with. Nobody can really see them, and those who do see them have a very negative energy response: scared, hate you, demon. And so they start to believe it themselves. I guess this is hell and I must be a demon. um and it's actually really very sad. So I feel blessed in a way that that wasn't my initial response, that I got to a place where I could actually feel what was happening underneath and start to work with some of these personalities, because all they really need is to settle out their vibration so that the light can connect to them and they can get to where they're going. And I've had that happen in all kinds of scenarios, both with the shadow people that are just kind of stuck in the 3D realm. Sometimes when people transition, they go through a similar thing depending on the circumstances. Like the gentleman in the car, it just happened so fast that there was no time for him to process what happened. He was very confused as to why he was just sitting in a car staring at a barrier. Sometimes there's attachment to the situation, especially if something traumatic or scary has happened. Like I once had a gentleman who he had been river rafting and his boat flipped. And while he had hit his head going in, he was already transitioned. He was very, very panicked and very, very worried about the children who had been in the boat with him. And so he was still flailing around in the river looking for the children. So sometimes when we have a strong attachment to somebody else in the situation, a loved one or something else that's keeping us thinking we need to help or do something, it kind of creates this vibration where it's hard to cross over. They're just focused on something else and not realizing what's happened. So in most of those cases, there's all some underlying energetic reason why they can't connect and move over.
You are such an amazing person. I mean, all of this that you have talked about, I feel the energy, I feel the passion, I feel everything within your voice. I mean, it's amazing. And the journey you went through to get to where you are right now is amazing. And it's great to hear that because it takes time and some people just don't have, the monies and all to go to classes to learn this. So a lot of us have to learn as we go. Like in your situation, you are one amazing person and the love you give is very strong. It's very strong. And
It was definitely, I don't want to give off like, again, it wasn't always love. Like, and I think this is something for a lot of people who to understand or to really to kind of integrate and accept about themselves. We talk a lot about love and light in the spiritual community. We talk a lot about all of these sorts of very idealistic things. Those things are the end result of a very long journey of shadow work. It's not all love and light. There's a lot, like I spent a lot of time absolutely hating the shadow people, absolutely hating even my angels and guides. I've always called them the others, but like, why are you in my head and what is this? Like, why you keep harassing me? Like, I spent a long time dealing with my own triggers and learning. So it was not, it was
you're
not
kind of breaking up
a
a bit, but you're doing so good at
of
what you
love and
do
light. It
though.
was self, because the well, I appreciate it. I had to relax, like I said, and actually embrace that and trust the universe to provide in order to get to a place where I was, yeah, able to talk about it openly. There was a lot of period of years where, I mean, my own husband didn't know any of this was going on. I was very, very closeted about it for a long, long time. People who've known me for years are like, "Wow, really? All that was happening since you were a kid?" It was upsetting. My dad didn't know about it. Like, so I hid it away from the world for a long, long time. And occasionally I would have other people that would come up to me, you know how you kind of like like knows like law of attraction. So I would occasionally have people who would come up to me and be like, "I can feel your energy. Like, why are you hiding? You're not like other people." I had one person who walked up to me once and actually like shot an energy, like a little energy ball at me, and I could feel it hit and go over me. And he said, "You know, most people can't feel that." He was like, I don't know why you're hiding." It was like, "Because I'm weird and you're weird and this is all weird. That's why."
Well, I am so glad, so happy that you came on the show and talked about your experiences, because what you went through and what you have spoke about is things that many people are going to want to hear. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, I've kind of gone through that. Yeah. Yeah, some of that makes sense to me. And okay, well, this is that and that and this. And that's why I haven't talked too much, because you're telling such a fabulous story that people are going to listen to this one and they're going to learn a lot off of what you're saying. So, oh my goodness, thank you so much for coming on the show.
No problem.
So
Anytime.
happy. Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah. Well, you have your own show. Can you explain that real quick, like?
I do. I have a YouTube channel. It's called Vibrational You, and it's like a you, like like university, because I think we're literally all here learning how to manage and control our own vibrations and interact with the vibrations of the rest of reality. The show, I do have a podcast. It's on Spotify, and I do upload it onto the YouTube channel. It's called Spirituality. It's spelled with a TEA. And that's because it's just some truth talk, real talk between spiritual practitioners. It's really just a comfy couch conversation for people with all kinds of experiences and practices to sit down and just chat about some of what we actually think is going on beneath the surface and get down to some real experiences. I think it's very important
Yeah, and
to
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's very important that we start to, put out there for people that, the spiritual journey is ups and downs. It is light and dark. There's elation and there's also sadness. Everyone has triggers and things to work through, and being honest about that journey and putting it out there, I think is very helpful. There's a lot of things that are just, love and light and forgiveness and all of this, and while that's ultimately the hope, I think it can have the effect of making people feel like they're failing at being spiritual, when really every single one of us here is spiritual, and that journey looks a lot like this. It's not like ascension does not go straight up.
And to
For
let everybody know, she's going to have me on her show early next year. So be watching for that.
Absolutely. And we'll get you all the links and things for that so that people can come check that out as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, our time's just about up. So thank you so much for being on the show today. So much appreciated. You're such a fabulous guest. Um, really appreciate it. If anybody else out there has any stories you would like to share with the paranormal or spiritual realm, please email me, lighttalk423@gmail.com. While you're at it, click on the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And we will talk with everybody later. And thank you so much for being with us. Bye.